Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
Welcome, everyone, again, the Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NCAA edition. This time we're going over the Group of Five in Notre Dame. Joining me, as always, far side of the world over there, Reese. Reese, what's going on?
What's going on, brother? How are you?
Oh, just talking football. We're getting very close to the beginning of the season. I think we are down to 2 episodes left after this one where we are not picking games. So
I love it.
We're getting there. In 3 episodes, we will be talking about Florida State, Georgia Tech, which is very nice, finally.
Very nice.
So let's start this out. Group of 5. We got some different changes with how the playoffs are going to work now. Going to get an auto bid from the highest ranked conference champion. And then Notre Dame, they've got their own little set of rules here. Basically, I couldn't really find anything official, but basically what I gathered out of this is they can't get a first round bye because they only play 12 games. They're going to force them into that first round essentially as their conference championship game. And then essentially if they finish in the top 10 of the rankings from what I've gathered, they're pretty much going to be in. I think there's even sometimes if they're 11th, they could probably get in. But that's kind of like the quick gist of what I figured out about how Notre Dame gets into this thing. So we're going to go over some preseason odds, and these odds are to make the playoffs. They are not conference championship odds like we've been posting in our previous episodes. So Notre Dame, obviously they're independent. Their conference or their odds to make the playoffs are minus 170, and the win total is going to be 10.5. It is plus money to the over, so it looks like Vegas is anticipating them to hit right around 10. Liberty, it's going to be another one, plus 470 to make the playoffs, 10.5 wins, minus 144 to the over. So Vegas is like, this team's winning 11, maybe even 12. Boise, in the Mountain West, they're plus 490 to make the playoff, 9.5 wins. Memphis in the American, plus 550 to make the playoff, 9.5 wins. Tulane in the American, plus 1,100 to make the playoff, 7.5 wins. UTSA, one of the more fun offenses to watch in the nation over the last few years, as college football fantasy players know. Plus 1,300 to make the playoff, 8.5 wins. App State, perennial underdog team that just wins, plus 1,400 to make the playoff, 8.5 wins. Texas State at plus 1,600 to make the playoff, 8.5 wins. They are a very sneaky team in the Sun Belt this year. My Fresno State Bulldogs, plus 2,000 to make the playoff at 7.5 wins. It's going to be kind of interesting. Jeff Tedford did have to step down for the second time in his Fresno tenure for health reasons. So we'll see how the loss of him impacts that offense. And then one I threw in here is Miami of Ohio from the MAC at plus 2,500 and 7.5 wins. Miami of Ohio was absolutely loaded last year, and they brought back almost everyone. I think this might be a sneaky team. Obviously, for them to make the playoff, they're going to have to go 12-0, win the MAC championship, be 13-0, and probably still have to hope for a little bit. But I mean, it's not crazy. So, Reese, checking out these odds for Group of 5 in Notre Dame, what are some of your thoughts for what you're seeing here?
Yeah, bypassing Notre Dame for now because we're going to dive deeper into their schedule here in a moment. Looking at Liberty, I hope they have another solid year. Caden Salter returning is one of the better QBs in the country. They're playing with 3 new O linemen, and they do need to replace CJ Daniels, a wide receiver who transferred to LSU. They're going to need to improve a little bit on the defensive front. Their September 28th game against App State is going to be a fun one to watch specifically. But if they can win that game, they have a decent shot at going undefeated. And I think Vegas is seeing the same thing there. Boise State, interesting one with Danielson doing what he did at the end of the year last year, going 3-1 and winning the Mountain West in his interim role. Excited to see what he can do as a first year as the full head coach. Having the USC transfer Malachi Nelson coupled with their running back Ashton Jonty, who's one of the best in the country, will be a lot of fun to watch, especially when you look at the transfer weapons they brought in at receiver core to join Caples and Straken, and they're returning 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line as well. Memphis, coming off a great year under Ryan Silverfield. They're bringing back 11 starters from last year. Seth Hennigan's one of the better QBs in the nation, looks to surpass his 3,800 yards and 32 touchdown season last year. They also did well in the transfer portal. including bringing in Mario Anderson from South Carolina to help support the run game with Sutton Smith. They also have that new DC in Jordan Hankins, so hopefully that'll help improve the defense. That was a weak spot for them last year. And then two more teams here I've got called out. First being Tulane. It's going to be interesting to watch with the new coach, John Sumrall, in the mix, who comes in after only 2 seasons at Troy, but he went 23-4. They do have the Oregon transfer Ty Thompson and Kai Horton both battling for the QB spot. They've also got a couple solid weapons at wideout from the transfer portal in Mario Williams from USC and Shaz Preston from LSU. And then you touched base on this a little bit, but UTSA, another American Conference team that will keep the conference interesting. Competition's tight at the top of this conference. Jeff Traylor is 27-4 in conference play. He's looking for his new quarterback with Frank Harris gone, but he has the Colorado transfer in Josh McCown's son, Luke McCown, to step in. And they're returning some offensive weapons to help ease that transition. So that's going to be another fun team to watch.
All right, so let's get in this. First, we're going to start with Notre Dame. We're going to do our win total prediction for Notre Dame here. For those of you that only listen to the podcast, this one's probably a must turn on just to check for the graphic. For anyone that watched last year, some of our guests from the show are very large Notre Dame fans, so we've included them a little bit in this.
So much so that they dress up for all of the games. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we're not going to spoil it too much for you, but get on and check it out on YouTube. Definitely leave some comments on that. So we're going to start Riley Leonard. He's coming in, transferred from Duke. I think he's got the chance to be the best Notre Dame quarterback in probably a very long time. He is coming off that ankle injury, so obviously that's going to be a little bit of a question, but he's had quite a long time to heal, so we would think he'd be all right. Another portal addition, wide receiver Chris Mitchell. He's a deep threat transferred in from the airport, Florida International. And then Clemson wide receiver transfer Bo Collins. They are replacing 2 NFL offensive linemen, but they do have pretty good depth behind it to fill those spots. Not too concerned about that. At running back, now it's Jeremiah Love's time to shine. He is going to be following in the footsteps of some very good Notre Dame running backs over the last few years that have all pretty much gone to the NFL. Defense looks like it's going to be very good again. Cornerback Benjamin Morris kind of leading the D. I think if they can come back and shut down the run, be the same type of defense they were last year, probably talking about a college football playoff berth for Notre Dame. But let's run through game by game schedule wise and see what we're looking at here. So kicking off, this one is one of the more interesting games on their schedule, actually, to kick it off. Saturday, October 31st, 7:30 p.m. at Texas A&M. It's going to be plenty of people on the opposite end of what we're looking at in this picture, dressed as yell leaders. It's talk about it. I can't stand what A&M does when it comes to their off-field stuff, but I think this one's going to be an awesome game and probably even one of the games of the year in college football as early as it is. Who are you giving the nod to in week 1?
Yeah, man, this is not an easy place to start your season with Notre Dame. Elko's going to have this team fired up with such a big opener as he kicks his first year off as head coach, and it's a night game. I can't make my mind up on who wins this game, which is going to make it all the more difficult because this game determines the over-under for me. Man, I don't know. I'll give the nod to Notre Dame because I do think that overall talent, they have it, but this game is not going to be an easy W being in Texas A&M.
That's an interesting start to the year too, with Elko versus his former quarterback in a completely new location.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting twist here. I actually have A&M getting the win here. I just think at home, I think it's too much. I like A&M in this one, starting Notre Dame 0-1. You did reference the win total. It is 10.5. So we'll see what happens at the end here for us. But so you have 1-0. I have 0-1. I think the next 2 weeks are probably going to be pretty easy for them. I think they win Northern Illinois and at Purdue. What do you have there?
I've got wins in both of those games as well.
So I have them 2-1 and you have them 3-0.
Yep.
I think this one's tricky. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't agree with this, but I think this is, we'll probably say 4th. This is probably their 4th toughest game on their schedule. Miami of Ohio, it is obviously a home game for Notre Dame, and 3:30, it's that normal lull 3:30 kickoff Notre Dame always has that I can't stand. But Miami of Ohio is a team that could go in there. They're very experienced. Like we just said, they brought pretty much everyone back. I think this one's going to be a very good game. I'm giving Notre Dame the win, but this is one that I'm interested in what the line's going to be.
Yeah, I've got the win here as well for Notre Dame.
I think they'll get revenge against Louisville from last year. I got them a win there.
Yep.
Bye week, then Stanford. Stanford's horrendous, so an easy win there.
Yeah, I've got Stanford losing there.
So they're going to be playing at Georgia Tech in a neutral site, the Falcon Stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, on Saturday, October 19th. Georgia Tech is a team that's a little bit on the rise. They had a decent end to last year. What do you have in this one?
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. I've got them winning, but don't sleep on Georgia Tech. That new offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, really had that offense humming. They went from 17.2 points per game to 31.1 in just a year. So this is definitely potentially a trap game for Notre Dame if they don't come in ready to play this one. But I do have Notre Dame winning.
And then we're going another neutral site game, Navy at MetLife Stadium the next Saturday. I've got Notre Dame winning that one.
I've got them winning that as well.
Of course, Notre Dame's going to get a bye week before the Noles come to town on Saturday, November 9th. It is a night game, 7:30 p.m. What do you got in that one?
Yeah, night game in South Bend. Irish coming off the bye week, so plenty of time to prepare, while the Noles will be coming off of a home game against the Tar Heels, I believe. The Irish have won 3 straight games against the Noles, including home wins in 2018 and 2020. DJU obviously has a lot of experience playing this team. Almost beat him as a freshman in 2020, but didn't play well in 2022. I think the Noles passing defense is drastically improved over last year, as well as their pass rush. That should help against Leonard and company. I have a feeling that the Noles are going to force Leonard into making some mistakes. I do think this is probably going to be a close game. Could swing the wrong way for Florida State, but I'm going to give the Noles the win here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very tough game, but it's kind of a style clash game. Both teams kind of play the same now. I mean, I don't know. I like Florida State in this one. Obviously, I'm not going to go against them in this game, and I could see this one going either way. So that's my second loss for them. Saturday, November 16th, they got Virginia at home. That should be a pretty easy one.
Yep, I got that as a win.
The following week, another neutral site game, Yankee Stadium for Army.
Tough game for them. Army always plays them well. They shouldn't have a problem against them, but I've got Notre Dame getting the W.
And then closing out the season at USC.
Another tough one, but Caleb Williams isn't there. I think Notre Dame wins this one.
So what did you just finished with one loss, right?
That's correct. Yeah. And again, it's a coin flip for me on that Texas A&M game. I really couldn't pick it. I had to pick one. So I gave Notre Dame the W, just thinking that this is going to be a super close game. But yeah, I've got the one loss is home against Florida State.
So I've got them losing to A&M and losing to Florida State. So I've got them coming in at the under at 10.5, which is minus 158. So I think Vegas is anticipating a 2-loss season for Notre Dame. One thing I noticed when I was going through their schedule, one, they play almost 0 road games, and they've got 3 neutral site games. Yeah. Their only true road games are the very first game at Texas A&M, at Purdue, which is like an hour from Notre Dame. It's not even that far, and Purdue is nothing crowd-wise that matters. And then at USC, the very last game of the year. So really, their true road games are going to be the first game and the last game of the year. And USC, if they're not having success, that's not going to be a road game because that stadium will not be full at all.
Yeah.
So what was I know it was on the first slide. What was the money for the over?
Let's just go back here.
So over is plus 128. So if you have them at 11 wins, you would be at the plus 128 on the over. I've got them at the minus 158 on the under at 10-2. Next, let's go to your group of 5 team that you have to make the playoff.
Yeah, so I went back and forth between Liberty and Memphis here. I'm going to go with Liberty because they have a much clearer path to the conference championship, I think, and locking in and at that over 10.5. They also have Caden Salter. Looking at the schedule, the only game that really stands out to me as a potential concern is that Saturday, September 28th game at Appalachian State. Mountaineers are coming in needing to replace 4 starters on the O-line and their lead back from last year, but Joey Aguilar is a stud. They have one of the top receiving cores in the Sun Belt. The question mark for App State is going to be their defense. They lost a lot of close games last year, but I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Salter. So I picked Liberty here as my pick to win the conference.
Yeah, and I've got a little. I'm going to go through mine first, but I found a little bet that I really love. Obviously, I love to throw in some random bets for big money, and this one's going to be very good. Let me go through mine, and then it's going to make sense. So I went with Boise State. Their whole O-line is back. As you mentioned earlier, Ashton Ginty back at running back. The number 1 recruit in the 2023 class, quarterback Malachi Nelson, transferred in from USC. They do not play Air Force. They do not play Fresno. Their final 5 games of the year are all against new head coaches. Like I love what's going on with Boise this year. Obviously, we at Georgia Southern. I'm not even going to sleep on that. Like that could be a sneaky game out, honestly, but it's not a conference game, so I don't think it'll hurt them that much. But I think they'll end up winning that game at Georgia Southern. The next week at Oregon, probably just going to assume that's their first loss of the season. I think that's a safe bet. They could go in there and shock the world, I guess, but it's probably not too probable. Portland State, Washington State, Utah State. I don't mind any of those. At Hawaii, at UNLV, San Diego State at home, Nevada at San Jose State, at Wyoming is a tough one, and then Oregon State to close the year. But when I went through it, I got them to basically 10-2 and potentially 11-1, with Oregon being the only loss. My only other potential loss is Saturday, November 23rd at Wyoming. I don't know. I really like this team. I love their schedule. The fact they don't play 2 of the top teams. The only thing that I wonder when it comes to playoff berth, though, is if it were to be Boise versus Fresno in the conference championship game and Fresno were to beat Boise, then their playoff chances would be gone then. But I do still like what Boise has going for them. So the bet that I discovered last night, I was just kind of messing around with things. It's a 3-team bet, and it does involve these 2 teams. So the first leg, it's a 3-team parlay. The first part of the bet is Ohio State to go undefeated. We've already done the Big Ten preview. We both of us think it's pretty probable, kind of like what we mentioned, where their only real challenge essentially is probably the Oregon game. Michigan obviously will be tough, and Penn State. There's games that will be tough, but this is just regular season. They just have to finish the regular season 12-0. For Ohio State, I don't think that's too far-fetched. Liberty and Boise both just have to win at least 10 games. I think we both just kind of proved that they should both be at least 10-2. That bet, if you do those 3 together, is plus 838. So a $250 bet would win $2,097.
Let's go.
That's a bet I like a lot. I don't Liberty, Boise State, and Ohio State. I'm pretty high on all 3 of those teams. I don't foresee that one being too big of a. No bet's a safe bet, but I like that bet. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
so,
I love the way that the Boise State schedule looks for them. The 2 games that I had circled, first being Oregon. The one that I had as the second potential loss was at Hawaii. They've pulled out a couple upset victories over the past couple years. Always traveling to Hawaii, I think potentially can just have some distractions built into it because of where it's located. It's such a travel situation for any team to go to Hawaii. So that was the other one that I had circled as a potential trap game as a loss, but I've got them in 10 wins as well. So
yeah, Hawaii's just not. Timmy Chang's trying to build it down there, but it's just not. I don't think it's there yet. Yeah. I do think that Boise will still be okay in this one, but yeah, it's always a road trip. I mean, anytime you're going to the island, it's an interesting game. All right, so that is pretty much going to wrap up our Group of 5 Notre Dame show. Like I mentioned before, we only have 2 episodes left before we're picking games. We've got our favorite future bets next week, and then after that, we'll be doing our conference championships. Who wins each conference, which you've kind of already heard if you've listened to all the shows. And then we're also going to be putting together our 12-team playoff predictions for both of us. After that, it is week 0. We'll be picking games. So, anything else on Group of 5 Notre Dame, Reese?
Nope. I'm just ready to start picking games, man. It feels like it's been a long time coming. So
yeah, I know. We're getting close finally. So for Reese, I am Jacob. That is the end of the Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast Group of 5 Notre Dame preview, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good one, everyone.
Cheers, guys.